The old house creaked, a gentle, familiar symphony of settling wood and shifting foundations that had been its lullaby for over 80 years. Outside, the twilight deepened, painting the vast Texan sky in hues of bruised purple and fiery orange, casting long, dancing shadows through the window panes of the small, cozy living room. Inside, the only light came from the sputtering flames in the stone fireplace, its warmth battling the subtle chill that always seemed to seep into old bones, even on a mild evening. The air was thick with the scent of aged cedar, dried wild flowers, and the faint, sweet memory of home-baked apple pie. Eleanor sat in her favorite armchair, a patchwork quilt draped over her knees, its faded squares telling their own silent tales of generations past. Her hands, gnarled and liver-spotted, rested on the quilt, their surface a roadmap of every triumph, every sorrow, every desperate grip on survival. They were the hands that had tilled stubborn soil, cradled crying infants, wiped away tears, both her own and others, and had, in one horrifying, defining moment, held a small, trembling camera steady as her entire world went up in flames. Her eyes, usually sparkling with humor, held a deep, ancient sadness that surfaced only in these quiet, reflective moments. A window into a past that still burned with a vivid, terrible clarity. At her feet, nestled close, was her 10-year-old granddaughter, Chloe. Chloe's face, framed by a curtain of bright, curious curls, was tilted up, her wide, innocent eyes fixed on Eleanor, absorbing every nuance of her grandmother's expression. The little girl had sensed the gravity in the air tonight. The unspoken weight of a story about to be told. A story that felt bigger and more important than any of the usual fairy tales or family anecdotes. "Grandma," Chloe whispered, her small voice cutting softly through the crackle of the fire. "Mommy says this house is very old. Was it always here? What was it like when you were little?" Eleanor smiled, a slow, gentle crinkle around her eyes, but the sadness in their depths remained. She reached down, her warm, dry hand finding Chloe's soft, small one, intertwining their fingers. "This house, sweet pea," Eleanor began, her voice a low, melodic rumble, like stones shifting in a quiet riverbed. "This house has seen more than just sunrises and sunsets. It has seen joy that overflowed its walls, and sorrow that settled into its very foundations. And yes, it was always here, in my heart, even when a different house, a much grander one, was the one that stood on this very land. To understand this house, you have to understand the fire that came before it, and the love that built it, only to be betrayed by the very hands I tried to raise." She took a slow, deliberate breath, gathering the threads of a lifetime. "My story, Chloe, isn't just about a house. It's about a fire that consumed everything I thought I had, and how I learned that sometimes the most precious things are forged not in comfort, but in ash. It begins not with the fire, but with the man who built the first house. Your great-grandfather, Arthur." The story unfurled like a faded, sepia-toned film, shifting from the warm, dim glow of the cottage to the vibrant, sun-baked fields of Texas decades ago. Eleanor, as a young woman, was the daughter of a cotton farmer, her hands calloused from an early age, her spirit tough and resilient. She spoke of Arthur, a man whose hands were even tougher, a carpenter by trade, whose dreams were as vast as the Texas sky. He built their first home with his own hands, a sturdy, beautiful farmhouse, white-painted and proud, nestled amidst sprawling fields that shimmered gold under the relentless sun. It was a monument to their love, a testament to hard work, and the foundation of their burgeoning family. Eleanor remembered the distinct smell of fresh-cut pine, of Arthur's sweat, and the faint scent of hope that permeated every nail he hammered. The scene is awash in the golden light of a Texan summer afternoon. The camera shows Arthur, a strong, handsome man with a kind smile, wiping sweat from his brow, standing proudly in front of a partially built farmhouse. Young Eleanor, radiant and full of life, hands him a cool glass of water, her eyes reflecting her deep love and admiration. The air hums with the sound of cicadas and distant hammering. Later, the house is complete. The camera slowly pans across the finished Victorian-style farmhouse, its white paint gleaming, a wraparound porch adorned with blooming petunias. Inside, the rooms are simple but filled with warmth and the scent of homemade bread. Eleanor, a new mother, gently rocks a baby cradle, a serene smile on her face. Arthur enters, tired but content, and kisses her forehead, then gently touches the baby's soft cheek. This is a home built with pure, unadulterated love and honest labor. That house, Chloe, Eleanor murmured, her voice laced with an old tenderness, was more than just wood and nails. It was our dream, our future. It was where your grandfather, David, was born, my son. He was a mischievous boy, full of fire and spirit, just like his father. The narrative paused, a perceptible shift in the air, as if a sudden shadow had fallen across the bright fields of memory. Eleanor's gaze drifted from Chloe to the flickering flames in the hearth, a flicker that seemed to mimic the dangerous spark that had ignited her greatest sorrow. David, Eleanor continued, her voice now softer, almost a whisper. He was always chasing something. Bigger, faster, more. He never quite understood the quiet satisfaction of building something slowly, honestly, with your own two hands. He saw the world as a place of quick gains, of shortcuts, of fortunes to be made. Arthur tried to teach him patience, the value of a day's honest work. But David, he always had his own ideas. She spoke of David's restless ambition, his early ventures that always promised much but delivered little, leaving a trail of small debts and bruised pride. Arthur, ever the stoic, would quietly cover the losses, always believing in the inherent goodness of his son. But Eleanor, with a mother's keen eye, saw the glint of desperation behind David's charming smile, the growing impatience with the slow pace of honest living. Then Arthur got sick. A slow, insidious illness that crept into his strong body and began to chip away at his strength, piece by agonizing piece. The farm, the house, the life they had so carefully built, all began to fray at the edges under the burden of medical bills and Arthur's fading strength. Asterisk, the scene shifts to the sterile, cold environment of a hospital room. The light is fluorescent and harsh. Arthur, pale and gaunt, lies in a bed, his strong hands thin and weak. Eleanor sits by his side, her face a mask of exhaustion and grief, her hand tightly clasped in his. David, now a grown man in his late 20s, stands awkwardly at the foot of the bed. He's dressed in an ill-fitting suit, a forced smile on his face, trying to project confidence. He leans over Arthur, his voice earnest, but with an underlying tremor of desperation. Dad, David says, don't you worry about a thing. I'm going to take care of everything. I've got a new business venture, a sure thing. It's going to make us rich. You just get better, and I'll make sure Mom never has to worry about money again. I'll make you proud. Arthur, with a weak smile, nods, a flicker of hope in his tired eyes. Eleanor looks from her dying husband to her ambitious son, a knot of unease tightening in her stomach. David's promise, delivered with such conviction, feels more like a heavy burden than a comforting assurance. Arthur believed him. Chloe, Eleanor whispered, her voice tinged with the bitterness of memory. He died with that hope in his heart, that David would be the one to secure our future. And after he passed, David was there, full of grand plans, full of promises. He told me not to worry, that the house was his now, and he would take care of it, and me. He encouraged me to sell the surrounding farmland, saying the market was good and we needed capital for his ventures. Eleanor sighed, a deep, shuddering breath that seemed to carry the weight of decades. I trusted him, Chloe. He was my son, my only child. And I watched him, slowly but surely, dismantle everything Arthur and I had built, all in the name of a better future that never quite arrived. He borrowed against the house, invested in schemes that evaporated, and slowly, the house that was once a beacon of our love became a financial trap, a drain of constant repairs and mounting debts. David saw it not as a home, but as an asset, a tool for his endless pursuit of easy money. Her hand, still holding Chloe's, tightened imperceptibly. And then, after years of this slow, painful erosion, came the fire that took everything, and left me with nothing but a memory and a small, trembling camera in my hands. The crackle of the fireplace suddenly seemed louder, more ominous, the warmth in the room momentarily giving way to a chilling sense of dread. As Chloe's innocent eyes widened, sensing the story was about to take its darkest, most unimaginable turn, the scene shifts to the sterile, cold environment of a hospital room. The light is fluorescent and harsh. Arthur, pale and gaunt, lies in a bed, his strong hands thin and weak. Eleanor sits by his side, her face a mask of exhaustion and grief, her hand tightly clasped in his. David, now a grown man in his late 20s, stands awkwardly at the foot of the bed. He's dressed in an ill-fitting suit, a forced smile on his face, trying to project confidence. He leans over Arthur, his voice earnest, but with an underlying tremor of desperation. "Dad," David says, "don't you worry about a thing. I'm going to take care of everything. I've got a new business venture, a sure thing. It's going to make us rich. You just get better, and I'll make sure Mom never has to worry about money again. I'll make you proud." Arthur, with a weak smile, nods, a flicker of hope in his tired eyes. Eleanor looks from her dying husband to her ambitious son, a knot of unease tightening in her stomach. David's promise, delivered with such conviction, feels more like a heavy burden than a comforting assurance. Arthur believed him. "Chloe," Eleanor whispered, her voice tinged with the bitterness of memory. "He died with that hope in his heart, that David would be the one to secure our future. And after he passed, David was there, full of grand plans, full of promises. He told me not to worry, that the house was his now, and he would take care of it, and me. He encouraged me to sell the surrounding farmland, saying the market was good, and we needed capital for his ventures." Eleanor sighed, a deep, shuddering breath that seemed to carry the weight of decades. "I trusted him, Chloe. He was my son, my only child. And I watched him, slowly but surely, dismantle everything Arthur and I had built, all in the name of a better future that never quite arrived. He borrowed against the house, invested in schemes that evaporated, and slowly, the house that was once a beacon of our love became a financial trap, a drain of constant repairs and mounting debts. David saw it not as a home, but as an asset, a tool for his endless pursuit of easy money." Her hand, still holding Chloe's, tightened imperceptibly. And then, after years of this slow, painful erosion, came the fire that took everything, and left me with nothing but a memory and a small, trembling camera in my hands. The crackle of the fireplace suddenly seemed louder, more ominous, the warmth in the room momentarily giving way to a chilling sense of dread. As Chloe's innocent eyes widened, sensing the story was about to take its darkest, most unimaginable turn, the setting is the grand, beautiful living room of the Victorian house, now showing neglect-faded wallpaper, a leak stain on the ceiling. The atmosphere is tense and claustrophobic. David, pacing wildly, is frantic. He is older now, his face lined not with work, but with worry. He holds crumpled bank statements. "It's over, Mom, it's all over," David whispers, his voice raw. "The bank is moving next month. I've lost everything. I've lost Dad's house. I'm going to jail." Eleanor, frail but resolute, attempts to comfort him, her arms around his shoulders. "We will sell, David. We will downsize. We will start over. We have each other," she insists. David shrugs her off, his eyes wild. Sell for what? The equity is gone. The fees, the debt. We'll walk away with nothing. Less than nothing. He pauses, pulling away completely. He lights a cigarette, his hands shaking, and then he drops the unthinkable truth, his voice barely audible. "The insurance. I doubled the policy last year when I thought the business would take off. It's massive. Enough to clear the debt and give you a good start. Enough to save me." Eleanor stares at him, her face white. "Insurance. David, what are you saying?" "I'm saying," he looks away, unable to meet her gaze, "that the house is old. The wiring is ancient. A faulty furnace. It happens all the time. A clean break, Mom, we walk away. We save ourselves. And nobody gets hurt." Eleanor shivered, despite the warmth of the fire. "He was asking me to destroy Arthur's legacy, to participate in a crime, to lose every tangible memory of my husband, the wallpaper we chose together, the height marks on the doorframe, the quiet little corner where Arthur used to read his books. All for money. All to save David from the consequence of his own greed." The next few weeks were a blur of cold horror. David began preparing the house, making chillingly obvious efforts to maximize the burn. Moving sentimental items he knew Eleanor wouldn't allow to be lost, but leaving behind everything that made the house their home. Eleanor moved in a daze, obeying him, packing a single suitcase, telling the neighbors she was taking a long vacation to see a distant relative. Her heart was a lump of cold stone in her chest. She was watching her son commit an act of spiritual suicide. "I knew I couldn't stop him. Chloe," Eleanor confessed, her voice thick with emotion. "He was too far gone. If I went to the police, he would go to prison, and I would lose him forever, just after losing Arthur. If I said nothing, I was complicit in destroying everything Arthur had stood for." Eleanor made a vow she would not lose her dignity, and she would not allow her son's crime to be an unpunished, forgotten lie. She would bear the terrible burden of the truth, even if it broke her. 2 days before the scheduled accident, Eleanor went to the local electronics store and bought a small, new handheld video camera. It was bulky, unfamiliar, and felt heavy and cold in her trembling hands. She told the clerk it was for filming wildflowers on her trip. "I decided," Eleanor whispered, leaning closer to Chloe, her eyes intensely serious, "that if I couldn't stop the crime, I would record the truth. That truth belonged to Arthur, to me, and to God. It was my only weapon against the lie, and my only means of holding David accountable, even if only in my own heart." The night arrived, cold and moonless, suffocatingly dark. David instructed Eleanor to wait across the large field, near the old oak tree that marked the edge of their former property. The camera angle is a static, shaky shot, as if being held by someone unstable. It focuses on the silhouette of the Victorian farmhouse under a black sky. Eleanor stands alone, gripping the cold, hard plastic of the camera. Her breath clouds the lens. She sees David's figure moving around the ground floor windows. He is pouring fluid, systematically preparing the final act of destruction. The silence is deafening. Eleanor presses the record button. The small, red light glows, affirming the truth is being captured. A sudden, sickening whoosh and the front porch erupts in a massive, orange bloom of fire. It happens so fast. The paint blisters instantly. Within minutes, the beautiful, proud structure that Arthur had built is fully consumed. Smoke billows blackly into the night sky, carrying with it the ghosts of 50 years of memories. Eleanor doesn't cry. She stands frozen, the camera fixed on the blaze, recording the horror as her only son, runs from the back door. His face illuminated by the inferno, his expression a mixture of terror and desperate relief. She keeps filming until the first siren wails in the distance. A sound of belated judgment. I watched my son burn my house down for insurance, Chloe, Eleanor finished. The bluntness of the statement cutting through the warmth of the room like ice. I watched him destroy his father's memory for debt. And I filmed the whole thing. She lifted her trembling hands and laid them gently on the quilt, but the invisible weight of the camera was still palpable. I had the proof. The truth. Now the hard part began, living with that truth and deciding what to do with it. Asterisk. Eleanor closed her eyes for a moment, letting the silence of the cottage room wash over her. She gently stroked Chloe's hair, her hand steadying again. The hardest part, my darling, wasn't watching the fire, it was watching what came after. The lie in the sterile, temporary life that followed the fire. David was unrecognizable. He was frantic, loud, and constantly present. He gave a flawless performance for the insurance adjusters, the heartbroken son, devastated by the loss of his father's home due to faulty, old wiring. He cried on cue, showed them the spot where Arthur had measured his growth, and spoke of the irreplaceable memories lost in the smoke. Eleanor played her role too, the distraught widow, numb with shock. She answered every question truthfully except the ones about the camera and about David's desperate state in the weeks leading up to the disaster. She didn't lie, but she held back the terrible truth. The one that burned hotter than the ruins outside. The insurance claim was massive, enough to clear David's debts and leave a significant sum for Eleanor. But there was a shadow on the edge of the investigation. Detective Ramirez, a quiet, sharp man from the Arson division. He wasn't convinced by the faulty wiring story. He saw the systematic nature of the burn, the lack of struggle in the fire's spread, and the high value of the newly increased policy. Ramirez interviewed Eleanor 3 times. He asked about David's finances, his recent behavior, and the emotional state of the household. Each time, Eleanor met his gaze, her own eyes hollow with genuine grief for the life that was gone, and she defended her son. Asterisk. The room is small, airless, and lit by harsh fluorescent light. Eleanor sits across a metal desk from Detective Ramirez, who regards her with steady, non-judgmental patience. Mrs. Harding, Ramirez says, his voice low, I understand the grief. But your son was facing imminent foreclosure on that home. The motive is clear. Did you see anything unusual that night? Any unusual containers? Anything moved out that shouldn't have been? Eleanor slowly shakes her head, the movement tired. Detective, my son loved that house. It was his father's legacy. He was under stress, yes, but David would never do anything to hurt his father's memory. The wiring was old. We all knew it. Ramirez leans forward, his gaze locking on hers. Mrs. Harding, if you know something, if you are protecting him, you must understand that this burden will destroy you. A lie is heavier than a truth. Eleanor looks down at her hands, the hands that still remembered the cold grip of the camera. I have lost everything, detective. My home, my husband, my peace. I have nothing left to lose. And I have nothing else to tell you. She knew Ramirez saw the lie, the avoidance, the maternal shield she had raised. But without physical evidence, without her testimony, the case remained circumstantial. The insurance company eventually paid out the claim. David was saved. He paid off his debts, bought himself a new, modest apartment across town, and breathed free. The money, however, became another invisible barrier between them. David was full of gratitude, constantly showering Eleanor with small, expensive gifts, trying to pay penance with material goods. But he never looked her in the eye for long. He never once spoke of the fire, or the night, or the shame. He simply lived the lie, and Eleanor was forced to be his accomplice. She took her portion of the insurance money, but she couldn't bring herself to buy a new, perfect house. Perfection felt like a continuation of David's lie. Instead, she bought this small, neglected piece of land, the very edge of their old property where the ancient oak tree stood. This is where she built this small, traditional cottage, not a monument to ambition, but a testament to simple survival. She built it with cash, avoiding all debt, determined to live a life totally unencumbered by the financial manipulations that had corrupted her son for 20 long years. The secret of the camera, the physical recording of David's crime, sat locked away in a safe deposit box. The video was her anchor to reality and her silent leverage. She never mentioned it, never threatened him, but David knew. He lived every day under the silent, invisible weight of the truth his mother carried. It didn't make him a better man. It made him a fearful, distant one. He became emotionally unavailable, obsessed with maintaining appearances. Perpetually anxious that the truth would escape her lips, Eleanor sacrificed her own comfort, her own relationship with her son, and even her own honesty with the law, all to save David from prison. But in doing so, she condemned them both to a life of living under the shadow of a profound, unpunished crime. The vibrant, loving connection she once had with her son was replaced by a cold, fragile understanding. She saved his life, but she lost his soul. I saved him from the bars of a prison. Chloe, Eleanor whispered, tears finally glazing her eyes. But I trapped us both in a cage of silence. And for 20 years, I watched the man I loved, my son, become a stranger, a ghost. Until one day, I decided I couldn't carry the truth alone anymore. The deep sadness in Eleanor's voice was now mixed with a renewed strength, a fierce determination that Chloe could feel radiating from her grandmother's small frame. The burden of the lie, Chloe, became too heavy to carry. 20 years of silence had poisoned David, turning him into a hollow shell who valued money and appearances over decency. He rarely visited, always offering excuses, always terrified of what I knew. His anxiety was a constant, low-burning fever. I realized that by saving him from prison, I had imprisoned us both, and I had done him no favor by letting him escape the consequences of his choice. I knew I needed to break the silence, not to punish him, but to free myself. The confrontation happened not here, but in David's pristine, modern officer place that symbolized his false success and the shallow life he had built on the ashes of his father's dream. Eleanor walked in unannounced, carrying a small, worn leather box. David, surprised and panicked by her arrival, ushered her quickly into his private conference room. He immediately started offering her money for home improvements and asking if she needed a little vacation, trying to bury the tension under material offers. Eleanor cut him off, her voice firm and level, the voice of the mother he had betrayed, now speaking the absolute truth. She told him she was tired of the silence, tired of the fear, and tired of the empty man he had become. She demanded he look at the truth, one last time, face to face. She opened the leather box and pulled out the small, bulky video camera. David's face went instantly white, the color draining from his cheeks, leaving him looking suddenly decades older. The sight of the camera, the physical proof that had haunted his nightmares for 2 decades, broke the careful facade he had built. He began to plead, his voice cracking, begging her not to show anyone, promising to do anything. Eleanor ignored his pleas. She calmly placed the camera on the table, connected it to the office monitor, and pressed play. She forced him to watch the shaky, silent footage. the terrifying spectacle of their beautiful family home erupting into flames, culminating in the horrific close-up of his younger self running from the fiery ruin. His face a mask of desperation and guilt, watching the undeniable, unedited truth the crime he had buried for 20 years shattered him. He didn't deny it. He didn't fight. He collapsed, weeping uncontrollably, the years of bottled-up shame and fear finally overwhelming him. Eleanor didn't console him. She let him weep for his lost soul. When he was finally exhausted, she made her terms clear. She would never show the video to the authorities. Not because she still wished to shield him from prison, but because she recognized that the man weeping before her was already serving a harsher sentence. Her condition was this: he was to sell his business, sell his flashy apartment, donate a significant portion of his wealth to a charity that supported honest laborers and fire victims. And then and only then was he allowed to return to the cottage land. He was to work with his own hands, rebuilding his life and his character through honest, hard labor without the promise of easy money. David, stripped bare of his lies and his false pride, agreed immediately. It was the moment of his profound, painful reckoning. He sold everything. The charity received the money, and David returned to the land, not to the site of the fire, but to a small, humble shed far from the cottage. He started working with the local carpentry school, learning the trade his father had mastered. Eleanor, watching him from the window of her small, honest cottage, saw her son slowly, painfully, begin the process of rebuilding his integrity. He still visited, but his visits now were not fraught with fear, but quiet humility. He would ask her about Arthur's techniques, about her memories of the old house. The connection they were forging was slow, tentative, and built on the foundation of shared, terrible truth. Eleanor smiled at Chloe, her eyes shining not with tears of sorrow, but tears of powerful, earned peace. I learned, Chloe, that a secret can destroy a life, but the truth, no matter how painful, is the only way to build something that lasts. I lost the big, beautiful house that Arthur built, and I lost the son I raised, but I gained back a man striving for honesty, and I gained my own soul. I figured out how to survive. I figured out how to live without the lie. And that, my sweet girl, is the greatest independence anyone can ever earn. Never be afraid of the truth. She squeezed Chloe's hand gently, the warmth returning fully to the little cottage room.